right? There were some detectives where I'm like, wow, they share great information. We work so well together. And then, of course, everybody has those few where they're like, because they know it's going to be a struggle. And it just doesn't, it doesn't have to be like that.
Hey there, my name's Ashley Church.
And I'm Erin West.
We were once newly promoted crime scene and latent print supervisors on mutual struggle buses as we both simultaneously tried to navigate through the challenges within our forensic units.
Now we run a business where we create tools and resources that we wish we had had to make these transitions easier. We like to talk about the experiences we've had in the forensic field, the good, the bad, and the ugly, in the hopes to create awareness around these issues and move the needle forward to create positive change in the forensic community.
So if you're a forensic professional, regardless of your years of experience, who's not afraid to dive into real, raw, and sometimes uncomfortable topics, you're in the right place.
This is the Forensics Unfiltered podcast.
Welcome back to Forensics Unfiltered with Gap Science, where we dive deep into taboo topics within the world of forensic science. I'm Ashley, one of your co-hosts, and we are almost to the end of our 6-episode series where we have been giving you an exclusive peek into last year's Forensic Supervisor Success Summit. Again, normally you would need to snag the All Access Pass in order to listen to these replays, but we are getting so pumped about this year's 3rd annual Forensic Supervisor Success Summit that we're sharing 6 interviews from last year's summit with you for free. If you don't want to miss out on free tickets to this year's summit, make sure to sign up for the VIP waitlist, and you will be the first to know when tickets become available. But that's not all. If you want to access past virtual summits, a whole treasure trove of webinars, and exclusive e-courses, join our membership, The Vault, for just $29 a month. It's your all-access pass to everything you need to stay ahead in the forensic field. Today, we are excited to present how women in law enforcement can have confident conversations with Dr. Heidi Sievers. Dr. Sievers is the founder of Sievers Forensics, a certified bloodstain pattern analyst, and lead forensic trainer. You can also catch her on the new true crime series, The Real CSI Miami, on CBS. Let's get started. Before we start this episode, our guests would like to share a disclaimer that the opinions shared are their own and not representative of their current or past employment. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Hi guys, welcome back to the Forensic Supervisor Success Summit. We are so excited to have you guys here today. I'm Erin West with Gap Science, and today we have Miss Heidi Sievers here with us from Sievers Forensics. We're so excited to get into her topic. But before we do that, welcome Heidi. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're so excited to have you. So before we dive into your topic, can you let everybody know a little bit about your background and kind of how you came to work in and with law enforcement?
So I hold a PhD in criminal justice, and I have my master's degree in forensics. I started out with a law enforcement agency in West Central Florida, where I was a forensic investigator and eventually came to be a human remains detection canine handler, which was a pretty novel position at the time. And throughout my time there, I really became interested in bloodstain pattern analysis. So any of the bloody scenes I was always volunteering for. That sparked my interest to go forth with more additional training. I became an II certified crime scene investigator. More recently, I've upped that to the certified crime scene analyst, and I hold the certified bloodstain pattern analyst certification through II. Kind of towards the end of my time with a law enforcement entity, I transitioned over to academia, so higher education, undergraduate and graduate level. I started there as adjunct part-time and then eventually moved forward to full-time with one school and then full-time with 3 universities, part-time with 1. And now I'm at 2 universities online full-time and am operating my own company independently, Sievers Forensics, where we do forensic, but mostly bloodstain pattern analysis, consultation, and training.
That's amazing. What a background.
Yeah, it's pretty,
I
it's pretty spread out and diverse, but
Yeah, I actually didn't know about the canine and cadaver dog stuff. So that is very novel. There's not a lot of agencies that have that. So that's very cool. And for those of you that don't know, there actually aren't a lot of certified bloodstain pattern analysts in the world either. So,
yeah.
so she's one of the few. So that's very exciting. All right. So when you first got into law enforcement, what were some of the challenges that you experienced being a civilian in law enforcement and also being a woman in law enforcement?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I would say not even from a law enforcement standpoint, but just from like a friends and family standpoint. At the time I started, I'm multiple kids later now, but at the time when I started, I was very tiny and I was young. I started at 21, so I was this very tiny, petite, young female. And at first, my family was like, "What do you mean you're going to work overnights in some of the rough parts of the county by yourself?"
Yeah.
So that was a struggle at first, but then it was really, I faced a big struggle with people taking me seriously as not only just a female, but being someone very young. And when I started, I already had my master's degree. So, I was confident in myself, but that did not translate too much. And, like I said, I was a female, I was young. So it took a little bit having people take me seriously. And I really had to fight through that. And I felt like I was always having to prove myself to people. But it
Yes.
took quite a while to realize that the only person I need to prove myself to is me. And eventually making myself confident kind of resonated to other people, and they identified the confidence I had in myself. And then in turn, they became confident in me.
I love that. I think that's such a struggle for leaders and supervisors in forensics. I
Mhm.
have met many people who are like, I'm the supervisor now, but they don't respect me as the supervisor. And I do think that stuff takes time. You
It
do
does.
have to prove yourself and your knowledge. You do have to earn their respect. It's not something that
Absolutely.
comes automatically. Like we would love for it to come automatically, but it
Yeah.
doesn't. So during that period of time, like you said, you spent time working on building your own confidence and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So what's something that a supervisor could do, you think, or something that you did to kind of help solidify that confidence for yourself?
Yeah, so I constantly challenged myself. So I knew that I wanted my niche to be bloodstain pattern analysis. So whether it was agency funded or I was doing it on my own, I constantly kept challenging myself to take more courses. And then in that education and that training, I became more confident in my abilities. And I shadowed as many people as I could and worked as many cases as I could to do at least for the knowledge to be imparted on me, that I would have confidence in my own knowledge. But I also challenged myself with leadership responsibilities. So whether you're somebody that's in a designated leadership role, like FTO, supervisor, chief, manager, whatever it may be, or you're just an investigator, because regardless, everybody is a leader and is expected to be a leader at some degree, whether it's informal or formal. So I really just pushed myself to take on even just small leadership opportunities in the very beginning, and then a little bit more formal towards the end, to impart the knowledge that I had on other people, but also push myself to have those uncomfortable conversations with law enforcement or sergeants or detectives and say, hey, this is what's happening and this is what we need to do and this is what we cannot do. Because that, I feel like, is one of the hardest things, regardless of the level of position, is to have those uncomfortable conversations. So I really just put myself in the uncomfortability, and in doing so, it made me comfortable later on. But you gotta jump into the thorn bush before you can
Yeah.
become impervious
Yes,
to it.
that's awesome. I love that and completely agree as well. Were there times throughout your career where you disagreed with your supervisors or with other law enforcement officers? How did you handle that challenge and how did you assert yourself in those situations without crossing the line?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say it happens much more often now. So now that I'm brought in as kind of like a consulting party, it happens much more frequently now than it did back then. But even back then, it did happen, quite a bit. But I'm always someone that I'm a Gemini and I'm stubborn, but I can always be educated. So if I have an opinion on something, I'm always willing to say, like, please tell me why you think it should be done this way. Like, please, maybe I'm missing something, please educate me. And then I would also present my points. And then sometimes we could reach a middle ground, and sometimes it was just you're my supervisor, you have more experience, like what, maybe we just agree to disagree and move on with what's best for the investigation. But I always try to present facts and opinions that were based on facts to them to say, hey, this is the scenario we're given, and this is what I think happened, or this is what I think we should do, and here's why XYZ, whether it was education, training, experience. But now those uncomfortable conversations are typically because people will call me in, and anyone who has been asked to consult on something or has a niche in forensics probably can resonate to this, where they don't necessarily want you to give your professional opinion. They want you to agree with them.
Yes.
So, and I always say, like, you're not paying me to agree with you. You're paying me to give you like an expertise that you can't necessarily find everywhere, but it happens a lot, and I've always prided myself on being one of the, a consultant that doesn't just say, okay, well, I'm going to agree with the state, or I'm going to agree with the defense, or whoever hires me. It's bigger than that, because people's lives are on the line. That should be obvious. But yeah, I've had to have those uncomfortable conversations of, hey, I know this is what you guys think, but that's not what the evidence is telling me. And my final report is not going to coincide with you. And with dealing with law enforcement, a lot of times they want to take it personally. And I have to remind them, this is not personal. It's not because I don't like you, or I think you have a far-fetched opinion. I understand why you thought this, but let me show you why I came to this conclusion. So, I've had some not so pleasant conversations with law enforcement who have brought me in where they do immediately get defensive. And I'm like, hey, listen, give me 20 minutes. I have a PowerPoint made on why I came to this conclusion. Let me walk you through it. And then if you still disagree, then that's completely fine. You're more than welcome to move on and go and get somebody else to look at it. But typically, I would say majority of the time, they go through my PowerPoint and they're like, oh, I didn't know that, or I didn't know to look for that, or okay, that's a good point. I understand now. So regardless of the role, with investigator, supervisor, independent, I think if you do disagree with someone, just be prepared to say, hey, I disagree with you, but this is why, and this is what I'm seeing, and present it to them that way. And I would say 99% of the time, even if they, are a little stubborn and still want to disagree with you, they at least have learned something from you telling them that. And pride aside, they'll take that for the next time and apply it in a different setting.
And it's so true. I think there were two things you said in there that really stuck out to me for supervisors, for sure. One is that sometimes when people question a decision that we've made or something like that, we take personal offense to it. Mm-hmm. And I love that you were very open to being like, explain to me your reasoning why. Like, I'm more than willing to listen. I might not have all of the information. Mm-hmm. And that's just a good communication practice to get into just in life, is to just not make assumptions and be like, this is my reason why. Tell me what your reason why is, just, and have that calm conversation. And then the other thing that you said that I really love and also think is a lesson that a lot of supervisors have to learn the hard way is you can't fight every battle. Mm-hmm. So you had said, sometimes we just have to agree to disagree and move forward. And that can be a hard thing to do too, because a lot of leaders want to fight for every last thing, but it's not always worth it. So, and it is okay to have disagreement and still work together professionally and move forward with the case.
Oh, absolutely. And at the end of the day, I always say, regardless if you end up agreeing or you end up disagreeing at the end of a minor conflict, the ultimate goal should be to learn something from it, whether it be content related. So, and I'm a firm believer that everybody has their specialty and expertise. So, and I definitely do not claim to be an expert at, at all different things. So if it's a scene where maybe someone can provide me some additional information, even if I still disagree based on my decision, I'm hoping that I learn something from that I can take with me to future cases. So I always tell everybody that even if you can't reach common ground on something, always try and take something away from it, whether it be a communication tactic like you just mentioned, or whether it be something content related. There's always kind of a silver lining at the end.
Love that. So why do you think that it seems to be a common struggle for forensic professionals to have disagreements with their sworn counterparts? And what do you think we can do to kind of bridge the gap between the two and become more of a team and less of like this conflict-oriented relationship?
Absolutely. So this was something I was always very passionate about when I was working in law enforcement. And even now, I don't get as much of that now when I'm brought in, but I think the biggest thing is
we're taking a quick break to shout out our amazing sponsor, Justice Tracks by Versaterm. They've been our top sponsor of the Forensic Supervisor Success Summit for the past 2 years, making it possible to deliver all of this fantastic content to you for free. Justice Tracks by Versaterm has been providing top-notch laboratory information management solutions to forensic laboratories since 1995. Based in sunny Mesa, Arizona, they serve some of the most sophisticated law enforcement agencies and crime laboratories across the globe, from North America and South America to Europe, Australia, and even the Middle East. All of their software solutions, this includes LIMS Plus, LIMS Plus DNA, LIMS Plus Portal, Chain Links, and more, are designed by experienced forensic scientists and built by top-notch computer engineers. With nearly 200 forensic operations using their software on 6 continents, you know you're in good hands. And here's something cool. Justice Tracks is constantly enhancing their applications with feedback from thousands of criminalists who use them daily. Plus, as a Microsoft certified partner, they use their latest technologies to develop applications that make a real difference. So, a big thank you to Justice Tracks by Versaterm for their support. If you're looking for a trusted partner in forensic software solutions, check out Justice Tracks. They're making a world of difference in the forensic community. Now, let's get back to our episode.
I think the biggest thing is that there will forever be this, like, I'm sworn and I carry a gun and this is what my duties are, and you are the support personnel. Because I think pretty much everywhere, forensics is regarded as a support service, which is true. And I don't think anyone in forensics claims to be, that first responder in same type of danger. But I think sometimes sworn law enforcement want to make that known that we're very different. But we know that we're very different, and we know that we have 2 totally different roles. So I think that because we are almost 2 different entities that do cross paths because we have to work together, they think that we're trying to tell them what to do on scenes and we don't want them to tell us what to do on scenes. So I think at the end of the day, it's one big communication failure when there is strife between the 2. And for it to be more of a collaboration, I have always said that when they, for example, like major crimes and detectives, like when they do debriefings on major scenes, forensics should be included. And I know it varies on agencies, but at my agency, we were never invited to the table unless we really pushed the envelope or if there was just so much evidence that they needed suggestions on what to send to the lab. But we were never invited. And I think, and not that, we get our feelings hurt really, but just collaboratively and for the best sake of the investigation, that should be a pairing between the 2. Stuff like that, when, that should be collaborative. And I think that just having those meetings like that on those major cases with both a supervisor and the investigators who worked it, whether it be a lead investigator or all of the investigators, I think that would go a long way, both with transferring information about what we know and what we saw and we documented on scene with the investigative maybe tactics or information that they've gained, but also just to show respect for one another, to show that, hey, we respect you as forensic personnel and the job you do and bringing you here to the table, but also that we respect them, that we know that each other's job can't be done effectively without good communication. There might be areas or things that we don't do because we haven't heard from them, and they might not know how to move forward without evidence that we collect. So I think there just needs to be an awareness of that 2-way street and that they're parallel streets, right? The 2 have to work together to be a roadway, but they don't intersect one another. And I think that's really the biggest misnomer, is that it's a battle on whose scene it is, who investigation it is, and it doesn't need to be like that. We can coexist together without, going into oncoming traffic. And that was my very bad analogy, but It is
No,
true, like
it's
we
true
can
though. It
go,
really is true.
we can be parallel streets, but we just don't have to run into one another. And I think that's
Yeah.
where the big breakdown comes, is that it has to be a competition, and it's just not. It's like it's almost apples to oranges.
Yes, I completely agree with that as well. I've worked for several different agencies, and I have worked for some agencies where like the detectives and the forensic unit are very much in step together, sharing information back and forth. And like you said, at the end of the day, it just makes the investigation better. And because we are offering a support service to the main investigation, but the information that you provide me will change the way that I work this case. And
Absolutely.
so if you're resistant to sharing information to me, then I'm going to work it the best I can with the information that I have. And I've also worked for agencies where that battle was existing and people weren't sharing information back and forth. And then you would find out after the fact that you would have handled something differently or would have done something more if you had known that information at the time. So I really think those communication battles can really hurt the case as a
And I
whole.
always used to say too, I think a lot of it is just an awareness and understanding of what each other do, right? I mean, like, they understand what forensics does and we understand what detectives do. But I always said that I personally thought that when someone in forensics gets hired on, within, the first part of their training, they should go shadow major crimes for a day. And I think when a new major crimes detective comes on it, even property crimes, but mostly major crimes, they should come shadow and do a ride along with forensics, because that the CSI effect still exists with people in law enforcement. It does. So, and even though they work in it, because they're not doing it every day, they have a misconception of what we can and can't do sometimes. And I think just having that awareness and being submersed in what we do just for one shift, I think they will understand, wow, they can't do all of these things I necessarily saw on TV or thought were possible, right? Or these are the struggles that they have, or these are all the calls they take in a day before having to come to this call out overnight. And then I think on the behalf of forensics, going to see what they do, we would understand the amount of paperwork they have and their caseload and what they're handling, that it's not just the cases we go out on. So I just think, and it all boils down to communication, right? Just communicating with one another and sharing what we're all doing. It's not this big kept secret. And I think at the end of the day, it just creates a much more collaborative effort between the two, because it can work beautifully together. Like you said, you've worked for agencies
Yeah,
that
it really
do that.
can.
And it really can. And in my experience, it was more on a detective to detective basis than it was the unit, right? There were some detectives where I'm like, wow, they share great information. We work so well together. And then, of course, everybody has those few where they're like, ugh, because they know it's going to be a struggle. And it just doesn't, it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So, in a nutshell, just kind of wrapping everything up, and since we especially have a lot of ladies in forensics, a lot of ladies at the summit today, do you have any last tips you could give some of them that have worked for you throughout your career to just build that communication bridge and make it a little bit better for them working at their agencies and working with the other sworn officers at their departments?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest piece of advice I can give is to have confidence in yourself, right? So understand you went to school for this, you have been working in this, however long it may be, you've gone to the professional trainings, you've done your FTO program and years of however many, you've been in the field. Have confidence in your abilities. And I understand that sometimes it can be intimidating sharing information with law enforcement, whether it be deputies, detectives, higher ranking officials, but have confidence in what you're doing and know your abilities, and don't be afraid to educate them on it. Even though they may put up a front, they will appreciate the information you gave them. And later on, you typically will hear them regurgitating the information you gave them. You may not get credit, but you will hear it come back out of their mouth. And that should be a good feeling for you. But the biggest piece of advice I can give anybody really, but mostly females in this field, is to have confidence in yourself. And that looks different for everybody. Whether you feel more confident by going to more trainings, whether you feel more confident, doing mock scenes and mock evidence and practicing, in the office, or whether you feel more confident working more scenes, do whatever you need to do to have that confidence in yourself. And that will shine to everybody else. Everyone else will be able to see the confidence you have in yourself, and they will feel more confident in you.
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right. So before we head out for today, tell us just a little bit more about your company and what kind of stuff you have coming up that people could hop into if they would like to.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sievers Forensics is really based on 3 facets. So we have forensic, but like I said, mostly bloodstain pattern analysis consultation. So, we assist law enforcement, attorneys, whoever it may be, with those types of matters. We do training, and we have trainings all over the United States this year towards the later end of the year. So this summit and past, we have Pinellas County Sheriff's Office for advanced bloodstain pattern analysis. We have Orlando Police Department for basic bloodstain pattern analysis in October. And if anyone is in the area or wants to take a nice little vacation, we have Fontana, California in November. We also offer webinars once a month. You can check those topics out at sieversforensics.com. And we also have a few one-day workshops in the works coming up, one of which is going to be at St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office in later September. That's going to be bloodstain detection and enhancement, a 3-day course. We have a set number of courses that have been IAI approved for initial and recertification, but we also custom tailor classes as well to fit whatever needs. And then the last part of our company is research. So we love to engage in bloodstain pattern analysis and detection and enhancement research. And we're always looking, if an agency or individuals want to partner on something, we're always open to partnering on research projects.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Always staying busy.
We'll post her website so you guys can go there and check out any of her upcoming classes if you want to partake in that stuff. But Miss Heidi, thank you so much for joining us today. We are so pumped to have had you here, and we really hope you guys enjoy the rest of the Forensic Supervisor Success Summit.
All right, guys, that's it for today's episode. Remember, click the link below. It's waiting for you in the show notes, and sign up for the VIP waitlist for the upcoming summit. This way, you will be the first to know when the free tickets to the 2024 Forensic Supervisor Success Summit become available. If you want continued access to this interview with Dr. Sievers, along with over 20 more interviews and presentations, you can grab the all-access pass to last year's Forensic Supervisor Success Summit. But honestly, the truly best deal out there is joining our membership, The Vault. And for just $29 a month, not only do you get access to past virtual summits, you also get access to a library full of webinars, over 20 topics to choose from, and several of our featured e-courses. It's truly the ultimate resource for forensic professionals out there. Don't forget to tune in next week for the last episode in the series called Introvert's Guide to Conquer Public Speaking with none other than John Black. Thanks for listening to Forensics Unfiltered with Gap Science, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much for being here and listening to Forensics Unfiltered. If you liked this episode, would you do us a favor and leave a review letting us know specifically what you liked about this topic? It will only take a minute, but it will really help us plan future episodes so we can bring you more topics that you want to listen to. We'll be sure to provide any links from today's episode in our show notes on our website. Head to www.gapscience.com. Until next time, stay safe out there.